I'm talking with Fred Tackett of Little Feat. Thanks for taking time.
Oh, I have nothing but time for you today.
And that awesome accent. It's a little bit of that what do they call it, the swamp rock, the southern rock influence of Little Feat. And Fred, I did a little research on you. I've always loved Little Feat. There's Dixie Chicken, got to be one of my favorites.
Yeah,
It gets you
great.
moving in your chair, gets you out of your chair, makes you feel good.
That's right.
And in my research, I found out that you were a studio musician for Little Feat, but didn't become a fixture with the band until the early '80s. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say yes. Yeah, it was late actually. It was like more like 80, 88, 86, 87, 88. Yeah, it's like Lowell, that used to live in my house with me. I mean, he's like one of my oldest friends, and I was, we were in Lowell, and then Richie Hayward and Billy Payne were all, we were all like buddies in Hollywood, just musicians who all knew each other, and we all hung out with each other. I was working mainly for a songwriter Jimmy Webb, who wrote Up and Away in My Beautiful Balloon in MacArthur Park, and anyway, he got me involved with doing session work with like people like Glenn Campbell, and then that would lead to more. So yeah, but when Little Feat was first getting, like in 1975, was really getting popular. Uh, I was like working with Bonnie Raitt and
Oh,
Jackson Brown and all. I was doing the Pretender and all that kind of stuff. So it's like Hollywood is kind of like a really small town for the clique of musicians that are working. There's billions of musicians in LA, but for the small group, and I was just fortunate and blessed to be a member of that group. We're like all just good friends, and everybody hung out with each other and stuff. So that's why I was like, I always said I was an auxiliary member of Little Feat, because I had a song on the Dixie Chicken album called "Fool Yourself," and Lowell and Jimmy Webb and myself were all at Jimmy's house, playing our songs for each other. And I played "Fool Yourself," and Lowell says, "I'll have that one." He took that. So that's how I kind of got off. So we all knew each other way before Little Feat got started. We all were hanging out and playing together and just partying and crazy '70s stuff.
now don't look. Don't pull the curtain back too far. We got to have some mystery.
Yeah, right.
So you are I said you were a session musician. You are a musician's musician, and I think Little Feat is also a band that musicians can relate with even more than just the average fan. You're a singer, songwriter, multi instrumentalist. How did you end up in Hollywood deciding, yeah, this is what I'm going to do with my life? I mean, parents out there are like, no.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that earlier. It was like, Joseph Campbell always says, "Follow your bliss." But I used to I made several decisions that were, just snap decisions to go do something, and they all worked out really well. I was playing in a nightclub, a 6-night-a-week job that they don't exist anymore. But
Right.
I used to play in this supper club 6 nights a week with backing up like kind of grade C acts that may have been on Johnny Carson one time or another. And they would do 2 weeks at this club, and we'd play 4 sets of, all kinds of, dinner music and light jazz and stuff like that. And this group from the Philippines called the Highbrows came through, and it was just, in the late '60s, and when Timothy Leary was saying, "Oh, drop out and do this and do that," and I just these guys said, "Hey, why don't you just get in this station wagon with us and become our musical director? We're going to Jacksonville, Florida," and I was going to college in Oklahoma City, and I said, "Okay," and just got in the back of this car. There was only one of them that spoke English. And I went to Jacksonville, Florida, and played 3 weeks, and then I ended up in Hawaii playing this long residency at a club in Hawaii. And Jimmy Webb, the songwriter, had just gotten the first money. He was 21, and I was 20. I was 22, I think.
You were
And
the old man.
yeah, he came into my nightclub. I was playing the song "Ode to Billy Joe" as an instrumental, and he was walking down the street, and and it was really popular. It was really, at the time, that was when it was a big hit. And he says, "That's Ode to Billy Joe." And his friend says, "No, it's not," because he didn't hear any words. So this guy comes running in and says, what song is that?" And I says, "Ode to Billy Joe." And he goes running out of the club. And later they all came back. And he said, "I'm putting this band together at my house in Hollywood, and da-da-da-da, I'm Jimmy Webb." And we're going, "Oh, Jimmy Webb, we know you. By the time I get to Phoenix, up and away. And by the time I get to Phoenix, two separately, totally different types of songs." And he wrote both of them. And everybody was, at least all my friends and musicians were all talking about this guy, So there he is. He's like coming over to, he said, "I want to give you a plane ticket. Come over and join this band." So I went, "Okay." And told the guys I was working with, I was like splitting. And I just left my equipment there and moved to Hollywood. And every time I did that, every time I just made a decision and jumped in the car and went, it worked out really great, because a lot of people, like my mom, would say, "You should be a band director,
Right.
like some stability, and, go find yourself a job in a high school and teach band." I was like, "No, I think I'm going to go play guitar in a rock and roll band." So,
And it
it
worked
worked out
out.
really well. But, yeah, so but that's always my advice, man. I mean, you got to take chances, and that's what I did, basically.
That's awesome. Yeah, follow your bliss, definitely.
Yeah, you kind of much have to I mean, that worked out really good for me. I mean, a lot of people say, I was just reading an article the other day about people's regrets when they were dying, and they were like,
Oof.
because they didn't do things that they wish they had done, they just, you just got to go do it.
Well, and I think getting outside of your comfort zone, that's where growth happens. And that
That's
definitely.
right. That's exactly right.
Now, Little Feat had a Zappa influence. I did not realize this.
Oh, yeah.
Were you around that group for that the Zappa?
Yeah, Lowell was in the band.
Right.
At one point, Lowell joined the band, and he played on Weasels Rip My Flesh. He played on King Kong. And he was also I was telling someone the other day, he was also a guard in the 200 motels when they put the hippies in the concentration camps. And they wanted all of our friends, Jimmy and all the rest of us who were hanging out, they were trying to get us to come be like, incarcerated hippies. But they were filming too early in the morning. We went, "Nah, I don't want to get up that early." So
True
we didn't do
musicians.
it. Yeah, but Lowell was definitely in the band. In fact, Frank, there's always this kind of story that, in fact, Lowell's the one who made the story of like, Lowell Frank threw me out of the band because I wrote "Willin'," which has drug
Right.
references in it. But the true story is Frank encouraged Lowell to start his own band, and actually was paying the guys in the band like $75 a week to keep everybody, alive.
Right.
So yeah, he was he was kind of the godfather. He said it in an interview himself. He said that was, the godfather of Little Feat, because he kind of like supported us for a few months there. Herbie Cohen, his manager, and was our manager.
Okay.
So that's the way that all worked out. But yeah, he was a big influence. We all loved. In fact, Jimmy Webb, when we played at Albert Hall, we played a version of "My Guitar Wants to Kill Your Mama." So.
I'm glad to hear that Frank Zappa was a good guy. I've always been a huge fan, and the fact
Oh
that he
yeah.
had influence on you. And I have to say too that I think Zappa was a musician's musician as well. And the music fusion that Little Feat has, when I read that about Zappa, I'm like, okay, I get that. I can kind of hear a little bit of that influence, but the music fusion is a universal. I think that's why Little Feat is so popular along so many generational lines and different types of people, because you appeal to so many. Is that intentional, or is that just the pull that?
Well, it wasn't intentional to appeal to a lot of people, but everybody at that particular time in our little music history, rock and roll, everybody was getting influenced. I mean, it was okay to like Miles Davis and Porter Wagner, Dolly
Yes,
Parton,
yes.
we dug country. We just dug all the different kinds of music. Lowell was deeply into to Indian music. A lot of his vocal stylings come directly from Indian singers. East Indian singers.
Nice.
And so yeah, we all like country music. We all like rock and roll. We all like jazz. So it's just natural to kind of incorporate all those together. But basically, it was giving ourselves permission to enjoy the different kinds of music. Because before then, people would be, "I'm a jazzer." No, I'm a country guy. I don't like jazz. That's a bunch of noise, that kind of stuff. But we were like, yeah, no, stuff's all good. And that was kind of like, the whole hippie thing too. Bill Graham was putting on concerts where he would have E. Power Biggs, the organist, play before, Frank Zappa or something, or Aretha Franklin. It was just like he mixed it all up, and people loved it.
The way it should be.
Yeah.
I'm speaking with Fred Tackett of Little Feat, and you've been a member of Little Feat since the late 80s, and at this point, you are the longest continuous? I just made a word up. Longest continuous member, and sadly, Lowell George passed entirely too early. How did you guys keep going past that?
Well, yeah, it was very tough. Billy Payne, who's still playing piano, he's the leader of the band. He's an OG.
Okay.
So he's there. And of course, Kenny Gradney and Sam Clayton were, part of the 1974, whatever it is, with the Dixie Chicken Band and everything, when it changed from a quartet, a more crazy Zappa-ass snakes on everything quartet into a little more New Orleans influenced band. And so Kenny and Sam are still around too, man. Sam's like the touchstone of our band, man. What was the rest of the question?
I don't even know. How did you guys keep going through that? I gotta think off
after
the
Lowell
time.
died. Right. Well, yeah, no, I was on the road with Lowell when he died. I was playing in his solo band because, actually Billy and Paul had fired Lowell,
Oh.
and because of his, some of his behavioral issues,
Some of his habits.
But he just acted like he wasn't that interested in the band at certain points and stuff. But anyway, he calls me up and says, "Hey, everybody, they fired me." And I went, "Oh no, man!" And so we put together a band together to go out and do his solo tour, and he died on that tour. It was just totally like brought everybody to a complete halt. It was 8 years of people. Billy was working with James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt, and there was all other different kinds of incarnations of like Chicken Legs, which was Paul Barrere and Kenny and some guys and stuff. It was just it was totally devastating. Nobody knew what to do until Billy and I were working with Bob Seger on the American Storm and record in his tour. And Billy called me and said, "Hey, man, we had this rehearsal hall that we went and dedicated a Little Feat room, and the band all got back together after 8 years, and we played through some tunes, and we were thinking like we want to like put the band back together, and would you like be interested in getting on the bus?" I'd always been a kind of utility infielder, but not a member, committed member. And I said, yeah, I'm all about it, man. And that was when we started up and been running ever since.
I love that. And running ever since. And this is no lie. You guys are out there crushing it, and with new music. When's the last time you guys had a new music? I know it's not been that long ago.
Well, we had a blues album that just was, nominated for a Grammy featuring Sam Clayton, singing all these mostly blues covers. We wrote one song called The Milkman, but that was just a year ago. But before that, it's been years. I mean, I read the figure the other day, and I can't remember it for now, but it's like 6 or 7 or 8 years since we had a record out, since Rooster Rag, whenever that was. And it seems like just yesterday, but we got a brand new one now. We cut it in Nashville. It's called Strike Up the Band, and there's a lot of, it's got our new members on it. It represents, Scott Sherrard and Tony Leone. Scott's an amazing guitar player, amazing singer, amazing slide guitar player. And he was like you said, you saw John Denver
Yes.
The first show that Scott ever went to was the Little Feat's Let It Roll tour when he was 12. You know,
Oh,
his parents brought him to that, and he was Greg Allman's musical director for the last decade or so of
wow.
Greg's life. And anyway, he was just his whole life he studied Little Feat, and when Paul was very ill and couldn't make the last tour we did before Paul died, we were had a sub. We had Larry Campbell, who is a good friend of ours from Woodstock and played with Bob Dylan for many, many years. And he was playing guitar for us for this tour, and he couldn't make the very last date. And the saxophone player that was playing with us said, I know this guy in Greg Allman's band that like knows everything Little Feat ever did, you know. And so we called him in, you know, to play the very last show of the tour, which turned out to be the very day that Paul passed away. We would just, you know, going to sound check at 4:00 in the afternoon. Our manager told us Paul just died, and we're just showing up, and here comes Scott walking through the door to play the concert, and we're just now finding out that Paul's dead, and he just threw down. I mean, he was amazing, and we just everybody looked at each other and said, "Well, you know, here's the new guy." You know,
Wow.
you know what's next. And then Tony Leone, who I had known Tony for a bunch of years. He was playing this gig we do in New Orleans called Dead Feet with Anders Osborne and Kenny and myself, doing Little Feat and Grateful Dead songs during Jazz Fest. And he was playing drums on one of those, so I got to know him. And Billy called and said, "Hey, I saw this great drummer. I want to get him in the band." I said, "Tony Leone." And I went, "All right, great. He's an amazing drummer. He plays, you know, plays a lot with a lot of the jazz guys in New York City, and also a great rocker. He played with Chris Robinson's Brotherhood and Phil Lesh and all that bunch of folks. And he's wonderful, and Scott's wonderful, and this record features both of them a lot. So it's really exciting, really exciting. We can't wait to start playing some of these new songs.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm really excited. May 19th, the Peoria Civic Center Prairie Home Alliance Theater. Little Feat is taking the stage. How much of the new music will be played? How much of what everybody knows? Is it a big mix?
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll play definitely more of the songs that everybody knows, and we play, like, you know, several of the new songs, you know, maybe one or two. Mostly it's like things like Fat Man in the Bathtub, all of our favorites. And so there's so many songs, but we throw in a few of them. We're not playing like the whole record or anything, but, you know, we throw in a couple here or there.
It's always good to get some new music.
People like to hear the ones they like, you know.
Yes, I understand
Gotta play
that.
Dixie Chicken. Gotta play Willin', you know.
You got to. I think it's probably like a law.
Yeah, it may be in certain states, but we enjoy it, you know. We have fun playing those songs. It's like it's not a chore at all.
He's following his bliss. Fred
Yep.
Tackett. Now, you guys have been rocking it out for 50 plus years. Are there plans rather to keep on, or are there plans to retire?
Well, we don't know. We just, you know, we're keeping on the road and doing what we do, and we do what we do.
Well, I think it's amazing, and following your bliss and taking those chances. Snap decisions were made, Fred, and you followed
That's
those.
right.
You followed those decisions, and I think
Same with Billy, you know.
Yeah.
Billy Payne came down from Northern California to see if he could get a job with Frank Zappa, and they sent him over to Lowell. You know, I said, "Go check out this guy's band." You know,
That's so awesome, and I wonder. I wonder if the music industry is like that now, if all the musicians are friends. There's so many differences now with social media and internet and Spotify and, you know, Bandcamp and all these. Do you think that that's still something that exists?
Yeah, I think that you know, knowing people is how you get work in LA. I mean, you start out doing like making demos for free for your friends who are songwriters, or you're a songwriter and you're getting your friends to come play on your demos, and then you send it to somebody, and somebody says, "Hey, who's that drummer?" or "Who's the guitar player on that demo?" And you start getting, you know, that's how you get to work, not just from, you know, making YouTube videos that show how good you are or anything like that. which is great. But I mean, it really is word of mouth in Los Angeles. It's like a small town. It's like, that's what, like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of recommendations and who do you see? Who do you see? You know, people.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Neil Stevenhouse, said they like what they see. You know,
Yeah.
he was talking about favorite guitars. He was saying, don't change the guitar that you bring to a session. They don't dig that. They want to see that same guitar. You know.
Don't make any decisions like that.
Yeah, man, they'll be coming in with something different and weird. You know, they're very superstitious producers. What is it? What's that?
Throw them off. Oh my goodness. Fred Tackett, you are awesome. And I cannot wait to rock out with Little Feat at the Prairie Home Alliance Theater at the Peoria Civic Center.
Good. I hope you come to say hi.
Definitely. And do you have any advice? I think all of what you just said is great advice for musicians, but anything that you could tell struggling or working musicians who are trying to make a living?
Well, the best advice I ever heard was from George Burns, and he said, "Take your wallet on stage with you." That's his advice. Don't leave your wallet in the dressing room.
George Burns, the comedian?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Take your wallet on stage with you.
But yeah, you know, you just like I said, take chances when you can, and you know, go for it. Play as much as you can. Practice. Get as good as you can be. All that.
Love it. We'll see you May 19th.
And take your wallet on stage.
Take your wallet on stage. Yeah, there's so much in that, definitely.
Yeah.
You can't take life too seriously. I know that.
Well, no, we're just blessed to be able to do what we like, you know?
Yeah, for real. Thank you so much for keeping us all dancing all these years. And I look forward to seeing you keep us dancing at the Peoria Civic Center May 19th. Get your tickets, Ticketmaster.com. Fred, thank you so much. You were an absolute treat and an inspiration. And I'm gonna take my wallet on stage with me next time.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
You bet. It's my pleasure.